Captain Jake Morrison stood at the wide window of his ship, looking out at the stars. The New Horizon had been his home for 3 years now, carrying him from planet to planet as Earth's top trade negotiator. Today felt different, though. Something was wrong. His communication officer, Lieutenant Tom Hayes, walked up behind him with a worried look on his face. "Captain, we're getting reports from the colonies. 3 of them have gone silent in the past 6 hours. Jake turned around quickly. "Which ones?" "New Boston, Haven Prime, and Cedar Falls. All of them stopped sending their daily reports at the same time." Dr. Lisa Park, the ship's expert on alien cultures, looked up from her desk. She had been reading about the Corinth Empire all morning. That's not a coincidence. Those 3 colonies form a perfect triangle in space. Someone planned this. Jake walked over to the main screen and pulled up a map of human space. The 3 colonies were marked with red dots. Lisa was right. They formed a perfect triangle, and they were all on the edge of human territory. "Get me Admiral Carter on Luna," Jake said. The screen flickered and showed the inside of a military base. Admiral Ben Carter appeared, his gray hair and serious face making him look older than his 50 years. Behind him, Jake could see busy officers working at computers. "Jake, I was about to call you," Carter said. "We've lost contact with 3 colonies. Our spy satellites show Corinth ships in all 3 systems. They hit them hard and fast." "Any survivors?" Jake asked. "Some, but not many. The Corinth weren't trying to capture the colonies. They were testing us. They wanted to see how we would respond." Dr. Park stepped forward. "Admiral, I've been studying Corinth behavior patterns. This attack follows their standard testing procedure. They pick targets that seem weak, hit them, and then watch what happens. If the response is weak, they attack again with more force." Carter nodded. "That's what we think too. Commander Amy Walsh is already on her way to scout their positions. But Jake, we need you to handle the diplomatic side. The Galactic Federation Council is meeting tomorrow. They'll want answers." Jake knew what that meant. For 200 years, humans had been the peaceful members of the Federation. They traded, they negotiated, they helped solve problems between other species. But they never fought back when attacked. Other species saw humans as weak but useful. "What? Do you want me to tell them?" Jake asked. Carter was quiet for a moment. "Tell them the truth. Tell them this was an unprovoked attack on innocent civilians. Tell them Earth demands justice. And if they don't listen, then we move to the next phase." Jake had heard about the next phase in whispers and rumors. Every human military officer knew there was more to Earth's defenses than what they showed the galaxy. But nobody talked about it openly. The screen went dark, and Jake was alone with his thoughts. He had joined the diplomatic service because he believed in peace. He had spent his whole career proving that humans could solve problems without violence. But now 3 colonies were gone, and thousands of people were dead. Lieutenant Hayes came back with more bad news. "Captain, we're getting reports from our spy network. The Thraxian hegemony and the Vorthan Syndicate are moving ships toward human space. They think we're weak now. How many ships? Too many to count. It looks like they're planning something big." Dr. Park had been quiet, but now she spoke up. "Captain, I think I understand what's happening. The Corinth didn't attack us because they wanted our colonies. They attacked us because someone asked them to." "What do you mean?" "Think about it. 3 species, all moving at the same time. The Corinth test our defenses. The Thraxians and Vorthans move their fleets. Someone coordinated this. Someone wants to see how humans respond to a real threat." Jake felt a cold feeling in his stomach. If Lisa was right, then this wasn't just about 3 colonies. This was about the survival of the human race. On the moon, Admiral Carter stood in a room that didn't officially exist. Around him, computers hummed quietly, processing information. from across the galaxy. Officers sat at workstations, monitoring ship movements, communications, and energy signatures. "Sir," one of them said, "the Corinth fleet is moving toward the Proxima system. Population, 4 million humans." Carter walked to a large screen that showed the entire galaxy. Human colonies were marked in blue. Enemy fleets were marked in red. There was a lot of red, and it was all moving toward the blue. "How long until Commander Walsh reports back?" he asked. 6 hours, sir." Carter nodded. 6 hours to decide the future of humanity. For 2 centuries, they had pretended to be weak. They had let other species think humans were just clever merchants and diplomats. They had built their real strength in secret, hoping they would never need to use it. "Sir," another officer said, "we're detecting massive energy buildups in Corinth." "Space. They're preparing for a major assault." "How major?" "Enough to wipe out every human colony in the outer rim." Carter looked at the screen again. The red dots were moving faster now, converging on human space like a closing fist. He had hoped this day would never come. But it was here, and he had to make a choice. "Send a message to all fleet commanders," he said. "Activate Protocol 7. Tell them it's time to stop pretending." Back on the New Horizon, Jake was preparing for the most important speech of his life. Tomorrow he would stand before the Galactic Federation Council and deliver humanity's response to the attacks. He had written and rewritten his speech a dozen times. Dr. Park came to his cabin to help him practice. "Remember," she said, "most of the species in the Federation think humans are weak. They expect you to ask for help or to offer some kind of compromise. But that's not what I'm going to do," Jake said. "No, you're going to warn them. You're going to tell them that humanity has been patient, but our patience has limits." Jake looked at his speech one more time. The words were simple, but they carried a weight that would change everything. "Do you think they'll listen? Some of them will. The smart ones will remember that humans have been in the galaxy for 200 years, and in all that time, no one has ever seen us truly angry. And the others? The others will learn." Jake Morrison, diplomat and negotiator, looked out at the stars one more time. Tomorrow he would deliver humanity's first and final warning. After that, everything would change. Jake Morrison stood before the Galactic Federation Council, looking at the faces of 200 alien representatives. The chamber was huge, with curved walls that reached high into the darkness above. Each species had their own section, and each section buzzed with quiet conversations. "The attacks on New Boston, Haven Prime, and Cedar Falls were acts of war," Jake said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "Thousands of innocent humans died. Earth demands immediate action against the Corinth Empire." "The Corinth?" Representative, a tall creature with 4 arms and silver skin, stood up. "The humans had military installations on those worlds. We were defending ourselves from human aggression." "That's a lie," Jake replied. "Those were farming colonies. The only weapons they had were hunting rifles." "Prove it," the Corinth said, sitting back down with what looked like a smile. Jake felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. "Earth has always been a peaceful member of this Federation. We have never attacked anyone without cause. But our patience is not unlimited." The chamber fell quiet. Ambassador Roy Henderson, Earth's chief representative, watched from the diplomatic gallery. He had been in politics for 30 years, and he knew when a room was about to explode. 3 hours later, the council voted. 47 species voted to condemn the Corinth attacks. 63 voted against any action. The rest didn't vote at all. Jake walked out of the chamber, knowing that Earth was on its own. On the moon, General Pete Collins received the news with no surprise. He had been preparing for this moment for 20 years. Around him, the hidden command center hummed with activity. "Sir," Lieutenant Sarah Kim said, "we're getting reports from our deep space monitors. The Corinth fleet is bigger than we thought, over 2,000 ships. And the Thraxians? 3,000 ships moving toward the Centauri system. The Vorthons? Another 3,000 heading for the Tau Ceti region. Collins walked to the main tactical display. 8,000 enemy ships were converging on human space. The largest fleet in galactic history was coming to destroy them. "Activate Phase 1, he said quietly. Across human space, ordinary people began to change. On the colony world of Riverside, a farmer named Bill Rogers was tending his crops when his communication device buzzed. He read the message, then walked to his barn. Inside, hidden beneath bags of grain, were weapons and equipment that had been waiting for this moment. On the mining world of Rockport, a woman named Helen Davis was working in the tunnels when she got the same message. She put down her tools and walked to a section of the mine that was marked as dangerous. Behind a false wall was a command center that had been built in secret over 10 years. On the trade station at Epsilon Eridani, a mechanic named Carl Johnson was fixing a cargo ship when his device buzzed. He finished his work, then walked to what everyone thought was a storage room. Inside was enough military equipment to arm a small army. All across human space, sleeper agents were waking up. Men and women who had lived normal lives for years or decades were revealing their true purpose. They were soldiers, and they had been waiting. Commander Amy Walsh crouched in the darkness on a Corinth military base. She had been watching their operations for 3 days, counting ships and recording their communications. What she had learned made her blood run cold. The Corinth weren't just planning to attack human colonies. They were planning to attack Earth itself. And they weren't alone. The Thraxians and Vorthons had agreed to divide human space between them. Every human world would be conquered or destroyed. She sent her report back to Earth. Then began the second part of her mission. The Corinth thought. Their base was secure, but Amy had been trained for this kind of work. She moved through the shadows like a ghost, placing small devices in key locations. When she was done, she disappeared into the night. Back on Earth, Lieutenant Kim was working on something that no one else understood. She was planning to lose. Not the war, but specific battles. She was choosing which colonies to sacrifice and which ones to save. "Sir," she said to General Collins, "if we let them take the Outer Rim colonies, we can gather intelligence on their tactics. We can learn how they fight, what weapons they use, how they communicate." "That means letting thousands of people die," Collins said. "Yes, sir, but it also means saving millions of people later." Collins studied her plan. It was cold and calculating, but it was also brilliant. The enemy expected humans to fight desperately for every world. Instead, they would let some worlds fall while secretly preparing devastating counterattacks. "Do it," he said. On the diplomatic front, Ambassador Henderson was having secret meetings with species that were uncomfortable with the growing violence. The Altarians had always been peaceful. The Centaurians valued trade over war. The Sigma Draconians were worried about what would happen if the Corinth became too powerful. "The Corinth are using this as a test," Henderson told them. "If they can destroy humanity without consequences, what's to stop them from attacking your worlds next?" The Altarian representative, a bird-like creature with golden feathers, looked worried. "But what can we do? The Corinth alliance is too strong." "Support us diplomatically," Henderson said. "And remember that humanity has been in this galaxy for 200 years. In all that time, have you ever seen us lose our temper?" The Centaurian representative, a creature that looked like a walking tree, made a sound like rustling leaves. "You think humans are more dangerous than they appear?" "I think," Henderson said carefully, "that humans are very good at not showing their true capabilities until it's necessary." 3 days later, the Corinth fleet struck again. This time, they hit 2 colonies simultaneously, Harmony and New Dublin. The attacks came without warning, and the defenders were overwhelmed in hours. But something was different about this attack. The human defenders fought with weapons that the Corinth had never seen before. Energy rifles that could cut through their armor. Shields that could stop their plasma cannons. Ships that moved faster than anything in their databases. The Corinth commander, General Vex, studied the reports from his flagship. Where did they get these weapons? Unknown, sir, his aide replied. Our intelligence said humans only had basic defensive equipment. That our intelligence was wrong. Double the next attack force. On Earth, the reports of the new attacks reached the Global Defense Council. The members sat around a table in a room deep beneath the Swiss Alps. They had been meeting in secret for 50 years, planning for this exact situation. Gentlemen, the chairman said, the Corinth have escalated. They're using full military force against civilian targets. Phase 2 protocols are now in effect. Around the table, military leaders from every continent nodded. Phase 2 meant that the gloves were coming off. Humanity would begin to show its true capabilities. Commodore Steve Baker received his orders while commanding a patrol fleet near the Vega system. His ships looked like ordinary cargo vessels, but appearances could be deceiving. Very deceiving. Sir, his communications officer said, we're getting reports of a Corinth fleet heading for the Proxima system. 4 million civilians. Baker looked at his tactical display. The Corinth fleet had over 500 ships. His fleet had only 12. In any normal situation, he would retreat and call for help. But this wasn't a normal situation anymore. Signal the fleet, he said. Tell them it's time to drop the disguises. The 12 cargo ships began to change. Hull plates slid away, revealing weapon systems that had been hidden for years. Sensor arrays extended from concealed compartments. The ship's energy signatures spiked as reactors that had been running at 1% power suddenly came online. In 10 minutes, the 12 cargo ships became 12 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy. Sir, the tactical officer said, we're ready for combat. Baker smiled. Then let's show them what humans can really do. The Corinth fleet was 3 hours away from Proxima when Baker's ships appeared on their sensors. The enemy commander laughed when he saw only 12 ships opposing his fleet of 500. He stopped laughing when the first human ship opened fire. The weapon that hit his flagship wasn't like anything in his experience. It didn't explode or burn. It simply made his ship's hull disappear, as if it had never existed at all. All ships, attack! He screamed into his communicator, but it was too late. The 12 human ships moved like nothing he had ever seen, appearing and disappearing, striking from impossible angles. His fleet, which had seemed so powerful, was being torn apart by forces he couldn't understand. When it was over, only his flagship remained. It was crippled, its weapons destroyed, its crew in shock. Surrender, came a voice from the human ships. This is your only warning. The Corinth commander looked around his ruined bridge. In less than an hour, 12 human ships had destroyed a fleet of 500. It was impossible. It was terrifying. It was just the beginning. News of the Proxima battle spread across the galaxy in hours. 500 Corinth ships destroyed by 12 human vessels. The numbers didn't make sense to anyone who thought they understood human military capabilities. General Vex sat in his command room aboard the Corinth flagship, staring at the battle reports. His best fleet commander was dead. His most advanced ships had been wiped out by weapons that shouldn't exist. But instead of retreating, he was angrier than ever. Call the Thraxians and Vorthans, he ordered. Tell them we need the full Alliance fleet. Every ship they have. His aide looked nervous. Sir, that's over 8,000 ships. The largest fleet in galactic history. Good. If humans want to play with advanced weapons, we'll crush them with pure numbers. On Earth, Colonel Dan Wright stood in a briefing room that didn't exist on any official building plans. Around him sat 200 men and women who had been dead for years, at least according to public records. They were the Ghost Battalion. Humanity's most secret military unit. Ladies and gentlemen, Wright said, the masquerade is over. For 20 years, you've lived as ordinary civilians on colonies across human space. Today, you become soldiers again. The woman in the front row, Major Kate Sullivan, raised her hand. What are our orders, sir? Simple. Every major trade route, every diplomatic station, every research facility that humans have established in the past 2 centuries has a secondary purpose. It's time to activate them. Wright pressed a button, and the wall screen showed a map of the galaxy. Hundreds of locations were marked with green dots. Trade stations, research labs, diplomatic embassies, mining operations. All of them had been built by humans over the past 200 years. Every one of these locations has been gathering intelligence on the species around them. Ship movements, military communications, industrial capacity, political discussions. We know more about every species in this galaxy than they know about themselves. The room was completely quiet. These soldiers had known they were part of something big, but they hadn't realized how big. That's not all, Wright continued. Each location also has hidden defensive systems and weapons caches. The peaceful trading post at Rachel? It's actually a fortress that can destroy anything within 10 light years. The research station at Barnard's Star? It's been building our most advanced warships for 50 years. Major Sullivan whistled softly. How long have we been planning this? 200 years, since the day humans joined the Galactic Federation. Meanwhile, Captain Alex Chun was preparing for a mission that would change everything. His ship, the Peacekeeper, looked like a standard diplomatic vessel. But like everything else about humanity's presence in the galaxy, appearances were very deceiving. Dr. Torres, he said to his science officer, are the quantum disruptors ready? Dr. Rachel Torres looked up from her control panel. She was young, but she was also the smartest physicist in human space. Ready, sir. But are you sure about this? Once we use these weapons, there's no going back to pretending we're a peaceful species. The pretending is over, Chun said. The Corinth want to see what humans can really do. Let's show them. The Peacekeeper was heading for New Eden, a human colony that was under attack by a combined Corinth-Thraxian fleet. Intelligence reports said over 1,000 enemy ships were converging on the system. The colony's 4 million inhabitants were evacuating, but they wouldn't have enough time. Sir, his tactical officer said, we're picking up the enemy fleet on long-range sensors. Confirmed, over 1,000 ships. And how many ships do we have? Chun asked. Just us, sir. Chun smiled. That should be enough. The enemy fleet commander couldn't believe what his sensors were telling him. A single human ship was approaching his fleet of over 1,000 vessels. Either the humans had gone insane, or they had something up their sleeve. All ships, prepare to fire on my command, he ordered. This will be over quickly. But when the Peacekeeper came within weapons range, something impossible happened. The ship seemed to flicker in and out of existence. One moment it was there, the next it was gone. Sensors couldn't lock on. Weapons couldn't track it. What is that thing? The fleet commander shouted. Dr. Torres smiled as she watched her quantum phase technology work perfectly. The ship wasn't disappearing. It was shifting slightly out of normal space, moving through dimensions that other species didn't even know existed. Firing quantum disruptors, she announced. The weapon that hit the enemy flagship didn't explode. It didn't burn or cut. Instead, the ship simply stopped existing. Not destroyed, not vaporized. It just ceased to be, as if it had never been built. Panic spread through the enemy fleet as ship after ship was hit by weapons that violated everything they thought they knew about physics. Some ships aged decades in seconds and crumbled to dust. Others were caught in gravity fields that crushed them into tiny balls of metal. A few simply vanished into other dimensions. In 20 minutes, the Peacekeeper had destroyed an entire fleet. Not one enemy ship escaped. On the moon, Admiral Carter watched the battle reports with satisfaction. Send a message to all human colonies. Tell them Phase 3 is now active. It's time to drop all pretenses. Across human space, the pretending stopped. Research stations revealed massive weapon arrays. Mining operations opened up to show vast underground shipyards. Trade posts activated defensive systems that could protect entire star systems. But the biggest revelation came from Luna itself. What the galaxy had thought was just Earth's moon was actually the largest military fortress ever built. Hidden beneath the lunar surface were shipyards, weapon factories, and command centers that had been growing for 2 centuries. "Sir," a technician reported, "all hidden fleets are reporting ready. We have over 50,000 ships standing by." Carter nodded. For 200 years, humans had been building ships in secret. Not just advanced ships, but more ships than any species in the galaxy had imagined possible. And the industrial facilities? Online and expanding, sir. We can build replacement ships faster than the enemy can destroy them. Back in Corinth space, General Vex was getting reports that made no sense. Human colonies that his spies had said were defenseless were turning out to be heavily fortified. Trading posts were revealing weapon systems more advanced than anything his military had. Worst of all, human ship production seemed to be unlimited. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Our intelligence said humans were weak." His intelligence chief, a nervous creature with tentacles instead of arms, shuffled his feet. "Sir, it appears our intelligence was completely wrong. Humans have been deceiving us for 2 centuries. Then we use everything. Call in the reserve. Fleets, call in ships from every system we control. I want every Corinth vessel in this attack." "Sir, that would leave our homeworld defenseless. Do it anyway. If we don't crush the humans now, they'll crush us." The message went out across Corinth. Space. Every ship, every crew, every weapon was being called to the battle against humanity. It was the largest military mobilization in galactic history, but humans were ready for it. Major Sullivan stood in the command center of what everyone thought was a peaceful research station at Wolf 359. Around her, technicians were preparing systems that had been hidden for decades. "Major," one of them said, "we're detecting massive ship movements from Corinth space. They're committing everything to this attack." "Good," Sullivan replied. "That makes this easier. When all their ships are in human space, their homeworld will be undefended." She walked to a communication panel and opened a channel to Luna Command. "Admiral Carter, this is Sullivan. The trap is set. When you're ready, we can end this war in a single day." Carter's voice came back clearly. "Understood, Major. All units, this is Luna Command. Operation Checkmate is a go." "Repeat, Operation Checkmate is a go." Across the galaxy, humans began to move. Not just the military, but ordinary citizens who had been waiting their entire lives for this moment. The farmer who was actually a weapons expert. The teacher who was really a ship captain. The shopkeeper who was secretly a master strategist. Humanity's true face was finally showing. And it was terrifying. Fleet Admiral Matt Johnson received his orders in the command center of humanity's most secret base. Around him, officers prepared ships that no other species had ever seen. These weren't just advanced vessels. They were weapons of war built by a civilization that had been preparing for this conflict since before most alien species had achieved spaceflight. "Sir," his aide reported, "all fleets report ready. We have the largest navy in galactic history. And the enemy doesn't even know we exist." Johnson looked at the tactical display. The enemy was coming with everything they had, thinking they were facing a weak species that had gotten lucky a few times. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. "Launch all fleets," he ordered. "It's time to end this charade once and for all." The largest fleet in galactic history emerged from the darkness between stars like a deadly storm. Fleet Admiral Matt Johnson watched from his command ship as over 50,000 human vessels appeared around the enemy forces. Ships that had been hidden for decades, built in secret shipyards that no alien species knew existed. General Vex stared at his tactical display in complete shock. His fleet of 8,000 ships, the most powerful force ever assembled, was suddenly surrounded by an enemy fleet 6 times larger. But the numbers weren't the worst part. The worst part was that none of these human ships appeared in any intelligence database. Where did they come from? He screamed at his officers. Nobody had an answer. Captain Rick Palmer sat in the cockpit of humanity's newest fighter design. The ship around him was smaller than most alien fighters, but it moved through space like it was dancing. His squadron had just emerged from what the enemy thought was empty space. "Ghost leader to all units," he said into his communication system. "Remember, we're not just fighting a battle. We're making a statement. Show them what human engineering can really do." Palmer's fighter accelerated to impossible speeds, weaving between enemy ships that couldn't even track his movements. His weapons charged with energy that came from sources the aliens had never dreamed of. When he fired, enemy ships didn't just explode. They vanished completely, erased from existence by technology that rewrote the laws of physics. Dr. Kevin Park watched the battle from his laboratory on the moon. For 30 years, he had been working on projects that other species would consider impossible. Today, those projects were finally being used. "Fire the dimensional cannon," he ordered. The weapon that launched from Luna didn't travel through normal space. It moved through higher dimensions, appearing inside enemy ships without ever crossing the space between. Corinth vessels found their hulls opening like flowers as reality bent around them. General Linda Hayes coordinated the battle from her command center deep beneath the Earth's surface. Around her, displays showed the position of every ship in the fight. But this wasn't just a battle. It was the execution of a plan that had been in development for 2 centuries. "Enemy fleet trying to retreat," one of her officers reported. "Don't let them," Hayes replied. "This ends here today." Human ships moved to block every escape route. The aliens had come expecting an easy victory against a weak species. Instead, they found themselves trapped in a carefully prepared killing ground. The Corinth flagship, Pride of Corvex, tried to break through the human lines. It was the largest ship in their fleet, armed with weapons that could destroy planets. But when it fired on the human ship blocking its path, something incredible happened. The human ship absorbed the blast completely. The energy that should have vaporized it simply disappeared into the hull, as if the ship was drinking the attack. "Impossible," General Vex whispered. The human ship responded with a single shot. The Pride of Corvex, the most powerful warship the Corinth had ever built, was disabled in seconds. Not destroyed, but completely helpless, floating dead in space. Fleet Admiral Johnson opened a communication channel to the enemy fleet. His voice carried to every ship in the alien armada. "This is Fleet Admiral Matt Johnson of the Human Defense Force. You came here expecting to find a weak species hiding behind diplomacy. Instead, you found the truth. Humanity has never been weak. We have been patient." On the Thraxian command ship, Admiral Crix listened to the humans' words with growing terror. His fleet was being destroyed by weapons he couldn't understand, tactics he couldn't counter, and technology that seemed to violate the basic laws of the universe. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "we've lost 70% of our ships. The humans are playing with us." Crix could see that was true. The human fleet wasn't just winning. They were demonstrating their superiority with surgical precision. Enemy ships were being disabled rather than destroyed, captured rather than killed. It was a message: we could kill you all, but we choose not to. Dr. Park activated another of his special projects. Across the battlefield, human ships began deploying temporal distortion fields. Enemy vessels caught in these fields aged rapidly, their hulls corroding and their systems failing as decades passed in seconds. How are they doing this? A Vorthan commander screamed into his communicator. The answer came from Captain Palmer as his fighter squadron danced through the enemy formation. We've been studying physics while you've been studying war. We know things about the universe that you haven't even imagined. Back on Earth, President Ellen Rodriguez was receiving reports from the battle, but she wasn't celebrating. This victory would change everything, and change was always dangerous. "How long until the battle is over?" she asked Admiral Carter. "At this rate, another hour. The enemy is completely outmatched." "And then what? The galaxy will never trust us again." Carter nodded. "That's the price of revealing our true capabilities." "But Ellen, look at the alternative. If we had remained weak, they would have exterminated us." The battle was indeed ending quickly. Human ships moved through the enemy fleet like wolves among sheep. Advanced targeting systems identified and disabled key enemy vessels with perfect precision. Gravity weapons crushed ships into tiny balls of metal. Plasma cannons fired bolts of starfire that melted through the strongest armor, but the most devastating weapon was fear. The aliens had come believing they were fighting primitives. Instead, they found themselves facing a species that had been preparing for this conflict since before they were born. Every human tactic, every human weapon, every human strategy showed planning that spanned centuries. "General," Vex made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. "All ships ramming speed. If we're going to die, we'll take some of them with us." But even this failed. Human ships simply moved out of the way, their pilots anticipating the enemy's actions before the orders were even given. A few alien ships that tried to ram human vessels found themselves passing through empty space as their targets phased into other dimensions. Admiral Johnson opened another communication channel, this time broadcasting to the entire galaxy. Every species in the Federation would hear these words. "This is humanity's final warning to all who would threaten us. We have spent 200 years among you as friends and partners. We have traded with you, learned from you, and helped you solve your problems. But we have also watched you, studied you, and prepared for the day when friendship would not be enough." On 100 different worlds, alien leaders listened to his words with growing understanding. The peaceful humans who had seemed so weak, so dependent on diplomacy, had been something else entirely. They had been predators disguised as prey. "We did not want this war," Johnson continued. "We tried to avoid it through patience and restraint. But you mistook our kindness for weakness, our diplomacy for cowardice. That mistake ends today. The last enemy ships were surrendering or fleeing. Of the 8,000 vessels that had come to destroy humanity, less than 1,000 remained operational. The rest were disabled, captured, or completely destroyed. Dr. Park shut down his exotic weapons and began analyzing the battle data. Humanity had revealed capabilities that would terrify the galaxy, but they had also held back their most dangerous technologies. The aliens had seen power beyond their understanding, but they hadn't seen everything. "Sir," his assistant asked, "what about the planet-killer weapons? The reality bombs? The consciousness disruptors?" "Those stay secret," Park replied. "What we showed them today was enough." Captain Palmer landed his fighter on the human carrier Phoenix. Around him, pilots were celebrating the greatest military victory in human history, but Palmer wasn't celebrating. He was thinking about what came next. "Sir," his wingman asked, "what happens now?" "The whole galaxy knows what we can do." Palmer looked out at the debris field that had once been the largest alien fleet in history. "Now we find out if the galaxy is smart enough to leave us alone." Fleet Admiral Johnson surveyed the battlefield one final time. The demonstration was complete. Humanity had shown that they were not the weak species the galaxy had believed them to be. They were something far more dangerous, a species that could hide their true nature for centuries, while preparing for the day when hiding would no longer be necessary. "Signal all ships," he ordered. "Begin Phase 5. It's time to establish the new rules." The battle was over, but the real work was just beginning. Humanity had won the war, but now they had to win the peace. And that would require a completely different kind of strength. President Ellen Rodriguez stood before the assembled representatives of 200 species in the Galactic Federation chamber. But this time, the atmosphere was completely different. No one was laughing. No one was dismissing human concerns. Fear filled the room like a thick fog. "6 months ago," she began, "your species attacked ours, believing we were weak. Today, I stand before you to explain why that belief was both wrong and dangerous." The chamber was completely silent. Even the Corinth representative, one of the few survivors of their fleet, sat perfectly still. "For 200 years, humanity has lived among you as peaceful traders and diplomats. We chose this role not because we were weak, but because we were strong enough to choose peace over war. We hoped that wisdom and cooperation could solve the galaxy's problems without violence." Ambassador Roy Henderson watched from the diplomatic gallery. After 30 years in politics, he had seen many speeches, but none like this. Ellen wasn't asking for anything. She was explaining new rules. "You forced us to abandon that hope," Ellen continued. "When diplomacy failed, when threats became action, when thousands of innocent humans died, we had no choice but to reveal our true capabilities. The question now is, what happens next?" In the Corinth section, the few remaining representatives whispered among themselves. Their empire was gone. Their fleets were destroyed. Their homeworld was under human protection, not because humans wanted to conquer it, but because other species might seek revenge against a weakened enemy. "You are wondering if humanity will now become the tyrants of the galaxy," Ellen said. "The answer is no. We did not fight this war to rule you. We fought it to survive, but survival has consequences." Admiral Chris Thompson sat in the military observer section, watching alien faces carefully. As humanity's new peacekeeping commander, he would be responsible for implementing whatever policies Ellen announced today. "From this day forward," Ellen declared, "humanity will serve as the galaxy's peacekeeping force. Not because we want power, but because recent events have proven that someone must prevent conflicts before they become wars." The Thraxian representative stood up slowly. "What does that mean for our sovereignty?" "It means," Ellen replied, "that species who can resolve their differences through diplomacy will remain completely free. Species who choose violence will discover that humanity has strong opinions about unprovoked aggression." Dr. Marcus Green had spent the past 6 months studying the psychological impact of the war on galactic civilization. His report showed that most species were experiencing what humans might call culture shock. Everything they thought they knew about the balance of power had been proven wrong. "The galaxy believed for 2 centuries that humans were weak," he had written. "This belief shaped trade relationships, territorial agreements, and military strategies. Now that the truth is known, every species must recalculate their position in the universe where humans are the dominant military power." Back in the Federation chamber, Ellen was explaining humanity's long-term strategy. "We kept our true capabilities secret, not to deceive you, but to allow your civilizations to develop naturally. If we had revealed our strength 2 centuries ago, it would have created fear and resentment. Instead, we chose to work alongside you as equals, even though we were not." The Altarian representative, the bird-like creature with golden feathers, made a sound like singing. "You studied us for 2 centuries?" "Yes," Ellen admitted. "Every trade mission, every cultural exchange, every diplomatic meeting was also an intelligence-gathering operation. We learned about your politics, your military capabilities, your psychology, and your history. Not to harm you, but to understand. You, General Ashley Davis was implementing the new security arrangements across the galaxy. Human ships now patrolled trade routes that had been dangerous for centuries. Pirates who had operated freely for generations were discovering that human patrols didn't issue warnings. "Sir," her aide reported, "the Rigel system is reporting 0 piracy incidents for the first time in 50 years. "Good," Davis replied. "What about territorial disputes?" The vegan-Andromedan border conflict ended yesterday. Both sides requested human mediation rather than risk military action. Davis nodded. Fear was a powerful motivator for peace. On Earth, Dr. Green was meeting with alien psychology experts who were trying to understand what had happened. The Centaurian representative, who looked like a walking tree, rustled its leaves nervously. "How did you hide your true nature for so long?" it asked. "Patience," Green replied. "Humans are very good at long-term planning. We think in terms of centuries, not years. While other species focused on immediate advantages, we prepared for scenarios that might not happen for generations. But why reveal yourselves now?" "Because the alternative was extinction. The Corinth Alliance would have destroyed every human colony if we had remained weak. Sometimes survival requires abandoning the role you prefer to play." Captain Jake Morrison, now promoted to admiral, was meeting with former enemies who had become reluctant allies. The surviving Corinth military leaders sat across from him in what had once been their capital's war room. "Your empire is gone," he told them honestly. "Your fleets are destroyed, your government has collapsed, and your people are afraid. But you have a choice." General Vex, now a prisoner of war, looked up with bitter eyes. "What choice do we have? You can rebuild as a peaceful civilization under human protection, or you can continue fighting a war you cannot win. If you choose peace, humanity will help you reconstruct your worlds and rejoin the galactic community. If you choose war, we will ensure you never threaten anyone again." The Corinth leaders looked at each other. The choice was simple, but pride made it difficult. "We choose peace," Vex said finally. President Rodriguez concluded her speech to the Federation with words that would be remembered for centuries. "Humanity never wanted to be the galaxy's police force. We wanted to be your partners and friends. But you have shown us that friendship is not enough to prevent war. So we will be what the galaxy needs us to be, the force that ensures aggressive species think twice before attacking their neighbors." She paused, looking around the chamber at faces that were still processing the new reality. "This does not make us your rulers. It makes us your guardians. We will protect the peaceful and deter the violent. We will mediate disputes before they become conflicts. And we will ensure that no species ever again faces extermination simply because others perceive them as weak." The vote was unanimous. Every species in the Federation accepted humanity's new role, not because they wanted to, but because the alternative was chaos. 1 year later, Admiral Morrison stood on the observation deck of his ship, looking out at a galaxy that had become peaceful in ways no one had thought possible. Trade flowed freely along routes protected by human patrols. Disputes were resolved through mediation rather than warfare. Species that had been enemies for centuries were learning to coexist. Ambassador Henderson joined him at the window. "Do you think we did the right thing?" he asked. Morrison was quiet for a moment. "We saved the galaxy from a war that would have consumed everything. Whether we did it the right way, history will decide. And if other species ever develop technology that challenges our supremacy," Morrison smiled, "then we'll adapt. That's what humans do best." In the distance, alien ships moved peacefully through space under the protection of humanity's invisible shield. Children on 1,000 worlds grew up in a galaxy where war between species was becoming a memory rather than a constant threat. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest strength was not their weapons or their ships, but their ability to plan for futures that others couldn't imagine. They had played a game that lasted centuries, and when the time came to reveal their hand, they held all the cards. The civilized act was over, but civilization itself had never been stronger. Peace. Through strength. It wasn't the peace humanity had originally wanted, but it was the peace the galaxy needed. And perhaps in time, it would become the peace everyone could accept. The stars continued to shine, but now they shone on a galaxy where the strong protected the weak, where patience had triumphed over aggression, and where humanity's long game had finally been revealed as the masterpiece of strategy it had always been.